Good morning. I bring you greeting for the Grace and Mercy and Hope Church in Pensacola, Florida, where I am at James Bernard Bird, the pastor, and we just this morning come to encourage you to uplift your spirit, to make you look to God, who the author and finisher of our faith. And so this morning we thank God for whoever listened to the message, that somehow it may bless their heart, bless their mind, bless their soul. And so this morning we ask you to turn to Michael in the Old Testament, and we begin at chapter 6 and verse 8. Listen what it said. He has shown thee, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of thee, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God, thy God. Listen what it said. It said, He has shown thee, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of thee, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God. This morning I want to talk about walking with God. Walking. My subject this morning is walking with God. Don't you see how when you had a child and your baby was born, and every time the baby began to walk, the baby fall. But then the baby get back on his feet again. And then the baby tried to walk again, and the baby fall. But the baby get back up. And the point I'm trying to make this morning is walking with God, sometimes we don't understand what God doing. And sometimes God don't tell us what he doing. Walking with God sometimes make us shed tears at night, and the Bible said weeping may do for night, but joy come in the morning. Walking with God, sometimes you'll be alone. Walking with God, sometimes your friends will turn their back on you. Walking with God, you might not have no friend. Walking with God, you might lose your job. Walking with God, you might lose your house. Walking with God, you might lose your car, but you got to keep on walking. Because if you God's child, whatever come in your life, while you're walking for him, while you're living for God, God will take care of us. And I'm a believer that God can do the impossible things in our life, what we can't do. God said, walking with me mean that the thing you can't do, you bring those things to me. And I'm the God who do impossible things for his children. And even people in the world, God can turn your life around. And God can put his spirit in you, and God can let you know I love you. So walking with God. Sometimes we get frustrated with God. We want to hear God, but walking with him, sometimes he don't tell us what he gonna do for us. He don't tell us sometimes when he gonna do it, but we gotta have faith in him. So walking with God. Sometimes with God we mess up. Sometimes with God we sin. But don't you hear? Don't you hear Romans the 6th chapter said, what shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? Don't you know when we mess up, God, we got grace. In the Old Testament, we didn't have grace. But in the New Testament, we got grace. God don't cut off your hand when you steal. God don't pluck your eye. In the Old Testament, he lets you see, keep over your eye. But reality is some sin that we should not be keep on doing. Must grace abound? Must we test God? Don't you hear Romans 6:1 says, what shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? God give all us grace. And I don't care who you is. I'd rather live under grace than live under law. The law, the Old Testament had no compassion too much for you. The law meant what it said. And the law did just what it said it was going to do. But here in the New Testament, in Romans chapter 6:1, God said, what shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? Is there something we should not be doing? We should grow for some sin. Some sin we should put away in our life. So here, let me get to chapter 6, verse 8. But let me give you a little background on chapter 5 in Malachi, chapter 5, 6 and 8. But let me give you the background, chapter 5. In chapter 5, God was dealing with witchcraft and spells, and God was dealing with carving images, and God was dealing with unfaithfulness. And God was dealing with, in chapter 5, fortune teller. And God was dealing with, chapter 5, false worship. I'm building my sermon for you to understand me. You can't just read Malachi 6:8. You got to get the background for chapter 5. What happened in chapter 5? God was dealing with some witchcraft and spell. God was dealing with carving images. God was dealing with false worship. God was dealing with unfaithfulness in chapter 5. In chapter 6, God is dealing with rich sought to increase wealth. Don't you see today, don't you see right now in this pandemic we're in, COVID-19, hurricane, don't you see the rich man? The rich man sought to increase wealth. Don't you see the rich man, why this world is down? He trying to make money. He don't care about the middle class. He don't care about the poor people. He don't care about the rich folks. In chapter 6, God is dealing with rich man sought to increase his wealth. And also God was dealing with falsifying records. Don't you see the courthouse, how they change the records sometimes? And God was dealing with balance, and God was dealing with violence. Don't you see the violence in the world? And God in chapter 6 was dealing with violence. The rich man didn't care. He didn't care about what's going on in the world. He don't care about nothing but himself. So chapter 6, God was dealing with the rich sought to increase wealth. They falsify records. They balance. They have violence and they're deceitful. And they lie. They lie to get what they want to get. They're deceitful. They do anything. And here in chapter 6, God is dealing with these things that we should not, as believers, we should not fall in. In chapter 7, I'm coming back to chapter 6, but chapter 7, God here is dealing with dishonest, commercialism. God dealing with false promises. Let me help you with this in chapter 7. When I say God is dealing with false promises, let me tell you something. If a prophet come to you and tell you that God gonna do a certain thing for you, God gonna bless you with a car, God gonna bless you with a house, God gonna bless you with $20,000, God gonna bless you with $1 million. If that prophecy don't come true, he is a false prophet. And all around this country, we got people who tell them folks some stuff and it never come true. And God said that you are a false prophet. You're a liar. Because if the man of God, the prophet of God, whoever you want to be, this morning you can be. But here in chapter 7, God was dealing with false prophecies. And people want to hear what they want to hear. But anytime a prophet, anytime a man of God say you're going to get something, you should get it. If you don't, the Bible called him a lying prophet. And all around this country, we got some lying prophets They're saying what God gonna do for people and never happened. So in chapter 7, God was dealing with the court system. The court system. Now you see that the lady who was on the Supreme Court, she had passed away. Don't you know they're gonna put people in her spot that think like they think, believe in what they believe? But that's why I'm trying to tell you this morning is God gonna deal with all that crookedness in the Supreme Court, in the lower court. But we as God people, we gotta do what He said do. What do God say we should do? This is what God said we should do. Look at verse 8. Look at verse 8. It said, He has shown thee, O man, what is good. God has shown man what is good. So man had no excuse. He had no excuse to know what God want him to do. God said, I have shown you what to do. What to do. What is good. What is good? Listen. It said, what does the Lord require of thee? What do the Lord require for James Bird? What the Lord require for you? What do the Lord require for both me and you? This is what the Lord requires. But to do justly. See, justly mean to have a heart, to desire to do good. So God said, you got to have a heart. Your heart can't be like the man in the world, the man in the street. Your heart has to be like God. God said, I require of you to do justly by everybody, no matter what color it is. Black, white, yellow, pink. God don't care. He wants you to do justly for everybody. He requires me and you to be justly. God requires us to do that. And justly mean to do good. And then God requires us in that verse 8, He requires us to have love and mercy. Don't you know love? You know how you fell in love with your first person. And nobody could tell you anything about that person. Nobody could tell you anything negative about it. You was in love. I've been there in love. Love sometimes blind you. Sometimes love make you do some crazy things sometimes. But here in this text, God said, I require you to do justice and to love mercy. Yeah, see, mercy, the love that God is talking about in Malachi, Michael, he's talking about chapter 6, verse 8. The love God is talking about love and action. Yeah, 10 and 15 years ago, I told people, quit telling me you love me. Because if you love me, your action will show me you really love James Bird. And so here God said, I require you to do good, to love mercy, and the love that God had for me and you. It was agape love, unconditional love. We as believers in this world, we gotta have an unconditional for the world. The world got to see that the church is coming together. The church got power. The church got able to people be healed. But we got to put love in action. We got to put it in action. We got to put it in action. So here in verse Michael said, He has shown the old man what is good, and what does the Lord require of thee? But to be justly and to love with mercy. Mercy and love, mercy means an action, an unconditional love God wants us to have. Walking with God, you gotta be justly. You gotta have love and mercy. And listen what God also said in the text. He said, I do justly, love and mercy. And to walk humble. Nobody want to be humble. You want to be better than me, and sometimes get the spirit in me. But God said, walking with me, you have to be humble. You don't get beside yourself. You don't get too much pride that God, you better than other folks. Walking with God, you gotta be humble. Walking with God, your life should speak for you. Walking with God, you should be obedient to his word. Walking with God, you should be continuing praying always, not stop praying. No matter what going on, constant praying to God to open some doors, to make your enemy leave alone. You got to constantly have a relationship with God, but constant prayer. Walking with God, you should be watchful. The Bible said, the Bible teach us, be humble as a dove. But God said, be humble. Be humble as a dove and wise as a serpent. That's what God want to do. Walking with God, you got to converse with him. You got to talk to God. And I want to deal. I want to deal with this walking with God. And I'm about through. I just want you to listen what it said again. I got to go back to the word, because the only way that you really gonna understand me if I keep showing you in verse 8 what God said He requires us to do. Listen what He said. He said, He has shown thee, oh man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of thee? But to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humble with thy God. Walking with God, you gotta be humble. Listen what I'm gonna tell you right now. Walking with God, this is how you pose to walk with God. Being humble, it stressed that man must remember that he is a man and God is God. And the proud will find no rest in him. Listen what the humble, the word humble, it means to stress. That man must remember that he is just a man. And God is God. And the proud man will God find that God resists the proud. God resists the proud who hold their head up in the air, your nose in the air. And you think you better than somebody. But walking with God this morning, you got to walk humble with thy God. That was the first say. You got to walk humble. You got to realize you ain't nothing but a man. But you got to realize that God got all power in his hand. You got no power to God give you some power. So don't you hear in this verse 8, he said, walk humble with thy God. Listen what Proverbs 11:2 said. When pride comes, then comes shame. But with the humble is wisdom. Proverbs saying, 11:2 saying, when pride comes, then it comes with shame. But with the humble is wisdom. Don't you see in the White House? Don't you see they got so much pride and stuff just coming out? God just put a cover over everybody. So when you're proud, when you're too proud, you think you're better than God. This is what happened to you in Proverbs 11:2. It said, when pride comes, then comes shame. But with the humble is wisdom. God gives wisdom to the humble person. The person who walked with him. He humble. He don't take a chance out. He don't think he's better than nobody. Don't you hear? Listen. Walking with God, you got to be humble. Don't you hear James, the 4th chapter, verse 6 and 10? Listen what it said. It said, but he give more grace. Therefore, he said, God resists the proud, but God give grace to the Hummer. Don't you hear? Come on this morning. Walking with God, you got to be justly. You got to have love and mercy. Walking with God, you got to be humble this morning. Walking with God. Here old James said, James 4:6 said again, 4:6-10 said, but he give grace, more grace. Therefore he said, God resists the proud, but give grace to the humble. And my last scripture about talking about humble, walking with God is James 1:27. Listen what it says. It said, pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this, to visit the orphan, what we don't do, and the widows, we don't do, in the trouble, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. God require us to visit the widows, to visit the orphan. Kids don't have no parents. God require us to do those things. God require us to do that. And so this morning, I come to you from Micah, the 6th chapter, verse 8. Walking with God. Look all around us. And people trusting in God, believing in God. And folks don't have a place to stay. Folks don't have food in their home. Folks, hurricane is coming. We got fires in California. We got hurricane in Florida. We got violence in the streets. But we gotta walk with God. No matter how it look in our life, no matter how dark it is in our life, we gotta walk with Him. We gotta trust God, that God will bring us through whatever going on in the White House. We don't depend on the White House to take care of us, because God said in His Word that He would supply all our needs. Walking with God, He will supply your needs. Walking with God, He'll give you a place to lay your head down. Walking with God, He will give you a job that pay you more money walking with Him. But you got to know how to walk. You walking with God, you're going to stumble and fall. But God give us grace. We live in a grace. God will forgive us for all our sin. Walking with God this morning. We don't understand. We have COVID-19. I said a while ago, you have hurricane in Florida. You have fires in California. And you have violence all over the street. But we got to keep walking with God. And how you walk with God is to be justly by everybody. Other words, break it down to understand. Treat everybody like you want to be treated. Be justly. And God said, also walking with me, you got to have love and mercy in verse 8. That love and mercy that word means action. You could tell Jane, bro, you love me, but show me. Your mouth can say anything, but your action let me know that you love James Bird. You love me. Action. That word love in verse 8, it mean to put in action. God requires us to be justly, to love mercy. God requires us to be humble. To be humble. And we as people in the United States of America, we got too much pride. You can't have pride. God hate pride. God make you out of fool. He'll make you shameful when you think you got so much pride and you better than folks. But walking with God, me and you got to walk with God and be humble. God will exalt you in time. He'll exalt me in time. But we got too much pride. We ain't done this. We ain't done that. Well, you can't do it no more because you're old. That's why you can't do it. That's why you can't do it, because you got the point where you can't do it. But walking with God, you'll be just like a little baby. When a baby begin to walk, I said earlier, the baby fall down, but the baby get back up. Baby fall again. He trying to walk. He trying to walk. And finally one day, he'll keep on walking. And what I'm saying this morning, walking with God, Michael 6:8 saying to be justly, to treat everybody right, to love and mercy, unconditional love, and God said, be humble. Be humble. God will exalt you if in his time. And his time is not our time. And so, don't you see how Jesus humbled himself? Didn't say a mumbling word. They hung him on a cross. Blood came down his side. They put him in a new tomb. But Jesus Christ got up all power in his hand. And when he got up and went back to heaven with his Father, the Bible teaches that he sit on the right hand side of his Father. God will exalt you in his time. God will exalt me in his time. But God requires us to be justly, to love mercy, and to be humble. I passionately you this morning, walking with God is not easy, but he'll give you assurance that he's with you. So walking with God. Every Sunday I tell you the same, before I leave, I tell you the same thing. If you got faith in God, God got the power to heal you. If you got faith in God, God got the power to answer your prayer. If you got faith in God like a mustard seed, you can move mountains. Not a physical mountain, but mountain in your life, things that go on in your life. God got the power to answer your prayer if you have faith in God. So today I prepare to leave. I hope you have a blessed day. I hope the doors are open. I hope God is turning your life around for the best. All you got is God, Jesus Christ. The world ain't gonna be good to you. I tell you, I've been out there. I know what the world do to you. But you walk with God, he will take care of you. He'll take care of me. May God bless you today. I bring you greetings from the Grace and Mercy and Hope Church in Pensacola, Florida, where James Bernard Bird is the pastor. Have a blessed day.